I'm here at Castle Oaks Productions to talk to veteran mixer and studio owner Frank Jones, who's waiting for me over in Studio A. So how did you get started in the business?
I started as a musician, drummer, in the early 70s, actually before the 60s, So I played in pop bands and worked in Vegas, and touring around the country, did that for a long time. I was doing a recording session at a studio in North Hollywood called Conway Recording. So I did a session there, and then afterwards I started hanging out, while they were doing a mix and so on. And anyway, I met up with the owner there, and the owner kind of noticed I really enjoyed it. He says, how would you like an intern job? And I go, yeah, it sounds really appealing. Basically, you do everything. You're a runner, the usual routine. And he was, at the time, his name was Phil Yin. He was the scoring mixer at Universal Studios. I'd meet with him after his sessions at night in coffee shops, and basically on napkins. He would, I'd ask questions, and he'd show me how certain frequencies would work and so on. And then during the daytime, while I was, when in between sessions, I had an opportunity to work on the console and try things. Basically that's how I learned the business. And then I started booking. Then I became the office manager, and I started booking dates. And then I started producing bands out of there. My partner, I eventually became a partner, and he suggested, that I said, I have these acts I want to start producing, with a friend of mine. So he gave me that opportunity, but it was getting crazy. Like this business, you start working a lot of hours, So after a long period of that, I said, I was really getting tired of that. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, how would you, I'd like to buy you out, but I'll give you an opportunity. You can get a job over at Universal. And that's how I started my film business career, And started over there at Universal in 1973 as a loader. Did that for a while, and then did some work out in production, operating in Niagara and Second Booming, did that for a while. Then after about 6 months of being at Universal, a friend of mine, John Neal, who's a scoring mixer at Warner Brothers, knew I had a background in records, knew how I could operate a multitrack. And in those days, in film, there weren't a lot of guys experienced in running multitracks. It was all film, running 35 reproducers and so on. An act came through looking the one to record on that stage. They had just won the previous year for Best New Act. There was a band out of New York called Dr. Bizarre's Original Savannah Band. They wanted to be, they wanted this like a 1940s big band disco sound. So they went to all the mixers on the stage. They had, and they said, we got this crazy group, from New York, and we don't, and every mixer turned it down. So I knew the stage. I was working as second engineer with all these bands and everything, and I knew the stages well. And they came to me and said, look, how would you like to be a mixer, And I said, sure, are you kidding? I'll be glad to do it. It was long, so 7 days a week, and it had to be at nights. It was like they started at 6 or 7 o'clock and worked till 6 in the morning, and it was 7 days a week. It was crazy. But, and the band never showed up till 11 o'clock at night, But it gave me a great opportunity to become a mixer and, get my union card as a Y1, and so I did that. It was a great experience. So that's how I finally got into mixing. So I did that. And then eventually they closed the record division down because it was actually we were doing too much record work. The scoring people couldn't get on the stages, so they closed that down. So they moved me into dubbing. That's where I started dubbing, re-recording. In those days, I was doing like Dukes of Hazzard and a lot of shows, Sheriff Lobo, different shows for Universal. We were doing a bunch of that kind of stuff. The original
Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah, we were doing the originals on those.
I watched that show as a kid.
The original ones, yeah?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to dub those shows, yeah. So anyway, I dubbed that for quite a while, and then eventually the scoring mixer on the stage left, and they needed a scoring mixer. So again, because I had that experience on the stage, they came to me and said, how would you like to go back on the scoring stage as a scoring mixer? And I go, yeah, why not, So I ended up working on the scoring stage, doing a lot of work for Columbia in those days, doing like Heart to Heart and Fantasy Island, and then I got an opportunity to go on the feature stage as a dubbing mixer. They asked, a buddy of mine said, hey, I would like to come over here, work on features with me. So that's when I moved on in the feature room, doing music and foley. So I did that for quite a while. Went back to the lot, and I started doing ER. And then I worked on ER for about 3 years. And after that, I left. I had an opportunity to go freelance with the same mixer I was working on the feature stage with. And that's kind of the history of what I've done over a few years.
So your career has spanned from being a musician to actually recording and working with bands to moving into, mixing and feature films and television shows. You've kind of lived the life of Riley, and now you own Castle Oaks.
And now I own Castle Oaks. I started as I was at Warner Brothers. I started building this facility in 1985. Yeah, it's my house and facility. So. And I was kind of doing it in conjunction. It was kind of crazy, building this house and running the facility and working at Warner's at the time. It was a busy time for me,
But I guess the payoff would be that now you get to live where you work and be able to enjoy the best of both worlds.
And I don't have that drive of driving 25 miles every day, into town. So no, it's great. I can fall out of bed and go to work, so it's great.
Do you find the creative process to be different between feature films and television and working with musicians, or is it all a spirit of creative collaboration?
Well, it's changed so much over the years. The earlier years, they had financially the budgets for, like, especially in TV, we'd have 40-piece orchestras. Then we saw, they started cutting the budgets. From 40, we went down. They said, okay, Columbia said, no more of that. 22 musicians. That's all we're going to pay for, unless it was a main title, or in credits. It was episodically on the rest of the shows, 22 musicians. And then it's got tighter and tighter, and then how many minutes they could do. And then there was a lot of pressure in those days of scoring. We had to do 5 minutes an hour. That was it. We'd roll it, and 8 o'clock downbeat, we rolled at 8 o'clock. And they wanted their 5 minutes an hour. It was really hard, in those days.
So it was constant deadlines.
Deadlines, pushing all the time.
What do you do when you're up against a tight deadline and things aren't working and it's just not gelling? I mean, you just push through it? Is there any?
I remember working with Mike Post. We were doing the A-Team, for example, and like Mike, he came in for a play. He goes, "I hear a tick in the strings. What's that?" He says, "Let's take a 10, find it." So it was crazy in those days because you got 40 guys out there and he's hearing a tick. It was like a mic crackling. You don't know where it is, so you figure out ways how to do it quickly. You had a 10-minute break, and you got to find it. Where is it coming from? So we always had in those days we were running 24-track. We'd have a 24-track online. We just double punch all the buses, and run it, and then we could, because we weren't running 24-track. It was only a backup. We were running right to 3-track mag on those shows. So we'd run the 24-track. We could isolate, then find out and what mic it was coming from. But little tricks you learn to work quickly because it was just deadlines and so much pressure.
It was baptism by fire.
It was, definitely.
What's your favorite part of your work? What's your favorite part of the job?
It was scoring. I enjoyed those years. So a lot of pressure, during those times, but it was really rewarding. I mean, you had to, nail it. You had 40, 50, sometimes 60 inputs in front of you, and you had to get it, and you're recording right to 3-channel. You get one rehearsal usually, and a take. That's how. And you had, maybe it'll go for a second take, but and the hardest thing when you start out in the morning is you get a 5-second cue, and 40, 50 inputs, and you got to get them all up there and balanced, and it's hard to balance a 5-second cue that quick. So the guys are not. The composers are good guys. They'll give you 2 or 3 rundowns, but usually you got to go for it.
So you have to be on your game
right now. And if you got if you have a rhythm section going, you're nice. If you get a great drummer out there, before downbeat, he'll go out and give you some drum sounds. But usually, it's really difficult. They expect 5 minutes an hour. And that's how it was. So it was really hard in that sense. But I liked the challenge. I really got the adrenaline going, and that I liked those years. They were fun. It's like going on stage, like you had to perform. It wasn't like, okay, let's overdub this. It's okay, now and you can sit there in Pro Tools and, play back and forth and back and forth, So it was fun. It was a different time, but it was rewarding in a sense.
What's the most fun you've ever had on a project?
Oh, boy, it's changed. I've had a lot, I guess working, I enjoyed the years, working with a lot of like R&B pop bands, they were fun, with a horn section all at the same time, I worked with a band years ago called Cameo, and it was fun. It was like they were out of Atlanta, and they were just such great musicians, you know. And that was a fun period for me doing that album, you know.
What advice would you give to someone who's mixing their first film?
Clean up your dialogue. The number one thing, get good dialogue, because that's the star. You know, that's what the story's all about. Work at that the most, you know, and then build everything around that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's an old 75.
It's got a good energy, you know.
Musicians like it, you know.
And what is all this stuff? These are plugins. This is what plugins look like.
Yeah.